Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Winchester City Council's Planning Committee, taking place in the Walton Suite of Winchester Guildhall. It is Wednesday, the 16th of April 2025, and the time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter, and I am Chair of the Planning Committee. Around the table, we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers. Lorna Hutchings, who's our service lead for the built environment, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, our case officers, which will change with each item, and Claire Buchanan from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please ensure your mobile phones or any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please look out the handouts provided on your chairs or on the information slides for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address us for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Just regarding item 6 on our agendas, I just wanted to report that most members attended a site visit yesterday morning to see the property in question and to see the proposed development in the context of its surroundings. Turning now to the agenda. First of all, we have apologies and deputy members. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence received from Councillor White and from Councillor Small, with Councillor Pett deputising. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Councillor Pett, and welcome back, Councillor Cunningham. Lovely to see you again. Just disclosures of interest, please. Does anybody have any disclosures? Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have three to declare. I need to declare that I have a disclosable pecuniary interest in respect to the items on the agenda today due to my additional role as a Hampshire County Councillor. However, as there is no material conflict of interest regarding these items, I have a dispensation granted by the Audit and Governance Committee that enables me to speak and vote on these matters. Additionally, I have a disclosable pecuniary interest on item 11 on the agenda due to my full-time job, having met with the applicant about 3 years ago about something completely different, but I'll be leaving the room for that item. And then on item 12, it is the application is in my Hampshire County Council division area, but I've had no conversations with the applicant, the parish, or anyone else regarding the application.
Thank you, that's very clear. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I need to make a personal but non-prejudicial declaration regarding agenda item 13. Although I'm not the ward member for St Barnabas Ward, this ward actually contains the neighbourhood of Warehairstock. I'm a councillor on Littleton and Hairstock Parish Council, which has lodged an objection. However, I am not a member of the Parish Planning Committee, and I have taken no part in any discussions regarding the application. Therefore, I will take part in discussions and vote thereon.
Thank you. Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. Just to declare an interest in item 12, in that I'm the ward member for Upper Meon Valley, but I've had no discussions with either the Bramdean Parish Council or the applicant, other than to gain access to the site to visit it yesterday.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Good. The next item on the agenda, number 3, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 12th of March. Are these an accurate record of the meeting, please? Is that agreed? Agreed. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I note we've missed off Councillor Small has been attending.
We had Councillor Small as attending at the last meeting.
So
Yeah. Thank you. So with that small amendment, are those agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, and we now need to accept the update sheet as an addendum to the report. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And now we move to our first application, number 6 on our agenda, at 30 Berwick Road in Winchester. And our presenting officer is Kat Watson. Catherine, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you said, members conducted a site visit yesterday morning where they walked around the site, looking where the locations of proposed dwellings will be. And I would also like to draw members' attention to the update sheet, where I have suggested a condition for removal of particular PD rights, including alterations, extensions to the buildings, buildings, hard standing, alterations to the roof. So that's there for members to consider if they need to. So the site is situated on Berwick Road, towards the northeastern end of Berwick Road. Its neighbours on either side are residential properties, and to the rear you'll see is the Peter Symonds College campus. So here we have the proposed site plan. So to the north is Berwick Road. We have the existing building retained. The existing building dates from the late 19th, early 20th century, so late Victorian, early Edwardian. It retains a lot of its original features and characteristics, and was therefore identified as a non-designated heritage asset, and its retention was considered an important part of the scheme. The original proposals for the site involved the demolition of that building, but now, following the revisions, the building is to be retained, but it doesn't form a part of this application. So the application that we're considering is just for the new development to the rear of the plot. So at the rear of the plot here, we can see we've got 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings, and then in the centre of the plot, we've got 2 detached dwellings, and then the access from the road leading up past existing dwelling plots 5 and 6, then curves round in front of units 1 to 4, and there is space for refuse vehicles and other large vehicles to be able to turn and manoeuvre so that they can enter and exit the site in a forwards gear. So here we have the tree protection plan. So at the top of the image here, we've got the existing dwelling, and then you can see the proposed development. A lot of the trees along the boundaries aren't actually within the site, they fall outside the site, but they will obviously be retained, and where necessary, particularly on the access track, the root protection areas will be looked after with a cell web constructed, surfacing, permeable surfacing, to ensure that there's no damage to those roots. A number of trees in the centre of the site will be removed. However, there's a comprehensive landscaping scheme, which we can see here. So here we see along the outside, we see the retained trees. The smaller circles indicate new trees and shrubs. There is a condition regarding landscaping, which is at the end of the report. And here we have Plots 1 and 2, the plans and elevations. So plots 1 and 2 are in the top right hand corner of the site, and it's a pair of semi-detached 19th century style dwellings. They have they've got a ground, first and second floor being the rooms in the roof. You can see we've got solar panels on one of the elevations, on both of the elevations, roof slopes here. And here we've got plots 3 and 4. Apologies, the title didn't change the title to 3 and 4, but these are plots 3 and 4. So slightly different orientation, slightly different style of architecture, with render and then brick for number 4. Eaves heights are the same though, although the ridge height of plot 3 is lower than plot 4. Again, we've got solar panels for both of those dwellings. Plot 5. So this is the first of the central plots. Single dwelling, single story garage to the side, a couple of dormers to the front elevations, and again solar panels. And again, apologies, I didn't change it from 5 to 6, but this is plot 6. We've got some bay windows, again dormers to the roof slopes, and then we've got some sections through the site. So section AA is looking through the site, towards the site from the road, and we can see the existing dwelling, and then dotted behind are the proposed dwellings. Site BB is looking from the centre of the site, and we can see plots 5 and 6 there. DD is looking from the centre of the site towards the rear, and that shows plots 1 to 4. And then CC, we're just looking again out of the site. EE is looking at plots 5 and 6, and FF is looking at plots 1 to 4 from the rear. So that's the rear of the site looking in towards the centre. And again, these are just sections through the site to show the topography, the sloping land, and just to see comparative heights of the buildings. So here we have photos. So this is the existing dwelling. This is taken from, currently the dwelling has 2 access points. This is sort of in-out access. So this is taken from one of the accesses onto Berwick Road. You'll see the sort of architectural style of the building. Then this is looking, this is positioned, top left is positioned on Berwick Road, and we can see the dwelling to the right here. And then the bottom right picture is taken from the other access, and we can see the house there. And again, just looking from the accesses and looking from within the site, so where these shrubs are, that as well as a short fence delineates the front of the plot. This is the dwelling from the rear. So there's a terrace with steps down, which will be retained, and there'll be a small area of garden allocated to the new dwelling. Sorry, allocated to the existing dwelling. And then here we have some snaps from the rear of the site. So the buildings here are Peter Symonds buildings. You'll see the large trees that are on site at Peter Symonds. There's a closed board fence between the site and Peter Symonds, and this is just looking down the opposite side of the boundary. And then this is the rear garden. So this is looking towards the back of the garden, where we were just looking. The rear of the garden is slightly unkempt, but has a number of trees and shrubs in there. And then we've got again looking from part way down the garden at some of the trees on site. And then the top left photo is taken from the rear of the garden, looking up through the shrub area. And then the bottom right is looking at the rear of the property, adjacent to where the access road will be. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kat. We now turn to public speaking, and our first contributor is Kate Jackson. Welcome, Mrs. Jackson. You will have up to 3 minutes, and the timer will show you the time remaining, which will start when you start speaking. Thank you.
Does the microphone work? Yes. Good morning. I'm Kate Jackson. I live at number 28, so next door to number 30. I've got 3 comments. The first relates to plans for the existing house. Currently, the revised plans show no provision for what's going to happen to the existing house. It is an old building in much need of repair. From works done to our own property, we would estimate that was $500,000 up to $1 million if you're rewiring, replumbing, doing the roof, getting it into condition that would be up to modern standards. And our concern is that the house is left to fall into further disrepair. The garden is then sold off, so the house is then less attractive for anybody coming in, because a family buying it wouldn't have the size of garden that somebody buying that kind of house would want. And secondly, it wouldn't be attractive in that somebody couldn't come develop the garden, use some of the money, excuse me, to do the necessary repairs to the house. So our concern is, number one, that we're left with on the road, there is a house that is falling further and further into disrepair with no plan for it. Secondly, and probably on a more personal level, one period of build for the garden, which would be 18 months or so, turns into possibly 5 years of uncertainty in building, because there would then need to be a whole nother build when the house was sold. So personal effect in terms of enjoyment of property, but also effect on all the traffic and all the works vehicles. Basically, we get two full-scale developments for one plot, which just feels a lot. Secondly, some more personal points in relation to enjoyment of our own property. While everybody finds change hard, I hope that we have taken a measured and cooperative approach to the build and the fact of development. But I would ask if you would very kindly look at the concerns in relation to certain windows on plots 4 and 5 that my husband has written in his objection, as those amendments, I think, would make a significant difference to the overlooking into our house and garden, because whilst about 30% of the boundary does have mature evergreen planting, about 70% doesn't, because, for example, the laurels at the top end, if the new property is sold to someone, if the old property is sold to someone else, may well go, and the rest is not evergreen and is far more scrappy and low level. Very quickly, the last comment is change to the road. At the moment, there's a lot of green space. I think if this is granted, there would be no reason to deny permission to anybody else along the road.
I'm afraid that's the end of your time, but thank you very much. Thank you. If you could just pause, we may have questions of clarification for you.
Of course.
Members? Questions of clarification for the next door neighbour? No, indeed. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a representative of the developer, Mr. Rees, if you'd like to come forward, Chris. And you also have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Chris Rees. I'm the Planning Director at Alfred Homes. As set out within the officer's report, the proposals before you today have evolved quite significantly, taking on board comments received regarding the scale and form of the new housing, as well as the retention of the existing property at Berwick Road. So this process has included input from the design review panel, heritage officers, the planning officers, and the urban design officers. Just to pick up on the point from Mrs. Jackson, in respect of the existing house, it's our intention to set the boundaries of that house very quickly in the process and put it to the market as a family home. We have a shared interest in this house. We're going to be building 6 houses to the rear of this property, so its form and its appearance and its upkeep is my interest as much as Mrs. Jackson. So that's the intention, and it will be priced accordingly in respect of the condition of the building and the work required to it. By extension of that, on the site visit, it was noted that there was a preference for hedging to the rear of the property. This is certainly something that we can do by the discharge of condition process. Members will note in the committee report that there are no objections from any of the City Council or Hampshire County Council consultees for the proposals compliant with planning policies. From a sustainability perspective as well, the location of the site offers great opportunities for walking and cycling into the city. And we discussed very briefly the provision of solar panels on all of the properties. There's EV charge into each house, and of course the building fabric are much more sustainable in respect of meeting modern day standards. As a local company to which we take great pride in our houses, and in the absence of standard house types, we design each house for its specific location, which gives us an advantage. And working with your officers, we've been able to design this scheme, which has been recommended for approval. And so I would respectfully ask that members endorse the recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions of clarification? Perhaps I could kick things off. The neighbour queried overlooking issues from plots 4 and 5. Would you be prepared to, if it was an appropriate window, to obscure or semi-obscure any such windows?
I have no question with obscuring, particularly plot 4 for that stairwell on the side elevation, particularly again on the side elevation of plot 5, bathroom windows. I've got no problem with obscuring those windows.
Any other questions of clarification? Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed on the report that these are to be built to level 4 of the environmental conditions that we asked for. Bearing in mind that we asked for level 5, is there any reason why you don't want to meet level 5?
We always strive to meet the standards asked of us. We have gone, in fact, I think it's 19% of our building regulations, which is code 4. My expectation is we'll go above that. We won't stop at 19 in terms of the building fabric and the other sustainability credentials. When we get into the construction drawing phase, and that's when we'll understand the true level of how sustainable these are, but they'll be beyond level 4. They'll be between 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Councillor Clear.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Mr. Rees. Like Mrs. Jackson, I was wondering about the existing property. Did I hear you say it will be going on the market?
Yeah.
Did you say so? I didn't quite hear that.
Yeah, of course. It's not. We typically we wouldn't do a refurbishment of that property as a business. Our business is building the new properties, but we have a vested interest in that property now to make sure that it's updated and refurbished, and so we'll put it to the market. We'll set the boundaries first, so there's no ambiguity in terms of those boundaries, and we'll set the garden, and then we'll put it to the market, and but it will be priced accordingly in respect of the condition of the property, because we want it to be as good as it can be as well.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed we had 57 objections to the scheme. Did you by any chance do like a public consultation or consult with the neighbours?
Yeah, I've met with Mr. Jackson a number of times. We wrote to a number of the neighbours to talk about the scheme. I think the vast majority, I'm going to say 95% of those concerned with the loss of the existing house. In respect of the changes that have come in from the revisions working with your officers, there have been very few objections to the proposals to the rear.
Okay, members? Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Rees. Thank you. You may return to your seat. Right. We come back to you, Catherine. Do you want to make any more comments before we come to members' questions on the report? Yes, we'll look at the floor plan for plot 4.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this one here. So the larger of the two properties. So this is the first floor plan. So the window facing number 28 serves the stairwell. Yes. So just here, the west elevation.
So we're proposing obscure glazing for the lower half of that, or the lower 2/3. Would that be reasonable? Would that be a reasonable condition? The ground floors? No, not the ground floor. I think because that's it's only a stairwell, isn't it?
Yes.
So perhaps we could add that to the conditions. So, and what about plot 5? That was also
again. So
that's got the single-story garage and things.
It's got the single-story garage
against the boundary.
And there are there's a couple of roof lights which serve the bedrooms, but they're quite high level. There's nothing at first floor level which would look towards number 28.
So we're confident that there's no overlooking from that plot?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you. Right, so if you've got nothing else to add, we'll go to members' questions. Is that okay? So members' questions on the report, please, to our officer. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I couldn't quite figure out how big these are, how many bedrooms each plot is. I can't see it in the report. Have I missed it?
Thank you, Chair. There's a combination of 3 bedrooms, 1 4 and 1 5. So apologies, let me just find the exact details of that. Right, yes, here we go. So there's 3 3-bed properties, which are the plots 1 to 3 here. And then plots 4, 5 and 6 are 4-bed dwellings.
Any more questions on the report? Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. And this probably comes more from my ignorance of the detail of the Winchester plan as a part-timer, but affordable housing contributions, are they not required at all from this development?
It doesn't trigger, the scale of the development doesn't trigger affordable housing. It's usually 10 dwellings or more. So that wouldn't be triggered for this size of application.
There is a significant community infrastructure levy payment though, isn't there?
Yes, that's right, yes.
Any more questions, members, on the report? No, we're all clear? Okay, so with no more questions, we'll move to debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, I'm just quite glad that we had the site visit yesterday. The scale of the garden and the size is, because it is quite overgrown, it's difficult to grasp without that visit that we had yesterday. So I'm quite pleased with that. I'm also pleased with the revised plans in retaining the existing property, and share although it's not part of this application, so we aren't able to sort of consider the existing property. I do share the concerns of the neighbours with it being derelict. However, I also feel as though it is in the interest of the applicant, from a sales perspective, to make that look nice, in order to sell the new dwellings that are being proposed. It's a pre-biodiversity net gain application, so we're not sort of hitting that 10%, but the applicant did allude to a suggestion from the ward count from Councillor Langford Smith yesterday about having an open day whereby neighbours and sort of nearby residents can go and rescue some of the quite extensive plants that are in the back garden. So I think that will be hopefully quite a good way of saving some of that nature there and replanting in other residents' properties. I will be supporting the application. I do think, although, as I say, initially I thought this is sort of squeezing quite a few properties into a garden, that the scale and the actual size that is there is able to accommodate this number of housing. I think with the additional conditions in regards to a construction management plan, should address concerns from that disruption to neighbours. I also think the additional conditions in regards to removing the permitted development rights would stop any extra creep and extensions to overlook neighbours, as well as the additional condition to obscure the windows that would overlook, I think, the swimming pool of number 28. So I'll be supporting this application.
Anybody else? Right, so if there's no more debate, we will move to the decision. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour, please? That's
8 unanimous, Chair.
8. Thank you very much. So that application is approved. Thank you very much. There'll be a short pause whilst we change our presenting officers. Okay, so we now move on to the next item on our agenda, item number 7, which is at Emlyn's Dradfield Lane, Soberton, and our presenting officer is Rose Chapman. Thank you. Over to you, Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we get started, I just wanted to do a verbal update. Condition 2 on page 63 of your packs currently reads that details should be submitted prior to construction above damp proof course. As you'll see towards the end of my presentation, that time has been and gone. So I suggest that it be changed to read within 3 months of the date of this permission, and then for details of materials for the finishing of the storeroom to be submitted. So some members may be aware of this site. Just to give you a general rundown of where we're at in terms of the history. So the site has been the subject of some enforcement. Most of these issues have been addressed at this point. So the access onto Dradfield Lane to the south, that has been addressed through the Planning Inspectorate through previous appeals. The issues and hedge removal have been addressed through a hedge replanting notice, and they have been complied with. In terms of the polytunnel, previous appeal decision has agreed the principal siting, location and design of the polytunnel. And as of today, there is one area that's being investigated by enforcement officers, which is a new access onto Ingoldfield Lane. So in terms of this application, we are only looking at the polytunnel and a new feed store / battery store. And so with the red line plan here, you can see Dradfield Lane running to the south at the point of cursor here. And Ingoldfield Lane runs to the east along here at the point of cursor. This grey area is Dradfield Lane Industrial Estate. And then we have an aerial overview of the area so you can appreciate the various context. There is a residential area here, which is Dradfield Cottage, which shares the boundary just to the northwest here. And you can see on this image where the polytunnel is situated in the context of the site. So here we have the elevations of the polytunnel. It's approximately 2 meters high, 5.5 meters wide. And for the storage building, again, it's about roughly 2 meters high, 3 meters wide. There is a slight overhang for wood storage. So the key issue from the previous application and appeal decision in regard to the polytunnel was the drainage issues. The current application includes a detailed drainage assessment, and this is one of the plans from within that. It shows that additional drainage channels have been dug around the polytunnel, and this shows the drainage features that have been installed across the site and where it links into the wider drainage infrastructure outside of the site as well. So at present, the site is capable of retaining around 49 cubic meters of water, discharging into the wider network at a rate of around 2 litres per second, which is considered the standard and is considered acceptable by officers. And you'll see on condition 3 does ask for a drainage maintenance plan to make sure that that is always working at its peak condition. Moving on to some pictures of the site. You can see these are both taken from the eastern end looking towards the polytunnel. It may be a little bit difficult to see, but the storage building can be seen at the point of the cursor just here. And then another view of the polytunnel. This is looking towards the northeast. And at the bottom, you can see the drainage channels. This is the eastern side of the polytunnel here. And at the top here, this is the western side of the polytunnel with the drainage channels. At the bottom, you can see the front elevation of the feed stall. This is the slight overhang for the wood store area. And there's a better view. So you get the entrance here with the wood stall, and inside you've got a battery that's linked to the on-site solar panels and feed. And then this is one of the connections. You can just about see the indentation along this area that leads to the wider network of the drainage just outside the site. This was taken towards the end of the season, so it's usually one of the summer jobs to clear out the drainage tunnels, and this would be one of the features that I would expect to be submitted as part of Condition 3 compliance. So the recommendation is to permit, as the application would comply with the local plan policies. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Thank you very much. We now move to public speaking, and our first contributor, I believe, is the ward councillor, Councillor Wallace. If you'd like to come forward, Councillor Wallace, you've got up to 5 minutes, and the timer will start when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. Just to clarify, I'm the Central Meon Valley councillor, not the water councillor.
I beg your pardon.
That's all right. That's
But
right.
you are a ward councillor. And you have up
Ward
to 5
councillor. Sorry, I misheard. I
you.
misheard. Yeah, you probably. I suspect most people around this table are wondering why this application has even made it to committee. It's putting a polytunnel in the countryside, and if you weren't, and most applications like this would never make it this far. But I think you've heard from Rose that the reason where we're here is this site is one has been there's been a lot of planning issues around this site over the years. It is one of the ones that our officers spend a lot of time on, and consequently, there is always interest in this site from our residents. Obviously, there is. I think if you've read the pack, there is some pushback against the actual look at the polytunnel, but I appreciate that has been accepted by the inspector. So the real remaining reason is issue is around the drainage. So the polytunnel animal feed store and battery storage support the applicant's agricultural activity in the countryside, and as per the report, they're deemed to have no harmful effect on the character or an appearance of the surrounding area. However, the key issue is the drainage. This is why the inspector dismissed the polytunnel aspect of the appeal in 2023. The inspector was not persuaded that there's been no increase in the risk of flooding at the site and elsewhere as a result of erecting the polytunnel. Surface water drainage surveys have therefore been carried out for this planning application in an attempt to address these issues, and it's suggested that there's enough storage capacity in what's been built along the filter trench to provide sufficient mitigation for any flood risk. The main surface water drainage survey was carried out a year ago now. Since then, it appears that more work has been carried out on the site, including engineering works on drainage ditch at the entrance, as well as additional hard standing running towards the gate. The drainage calculations in the consultant's survey therefore cannot be entirely relied upon to give an accurate picture of the drainage requirements on the site, because more hard standing continues to be put down. So if the committee are minded to support this application, then I would ask that they consider adding additional conditions to ensure no further hard standing is created on the site that will exacerbate the drainage issues. We also need to ensure that there is ongoing maintenance of the subs and infrastructure drainage ditches, but I think I've seen that Rose has put a condition in for that, so I think that one's covered. So I think really the main one is to consider whether we can put in another condition on to prevent any more hard standing, because that will obviously invalidate all the drainage solutions that have been put there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for the ward councillor? Councillor Laming.
When you refer to hard standing, are you looking at concrete or are you looking at a permeable surface that's been put down?
At times, different things have been put there at different times. There has been all kinds of stuff happened on the site. And it's not always, I know that our enforcement team have been there relatively recently and they're probably best placed to answer on what is there right now.
Okay, if there are no further questions, members, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wallace. So we come back to you, Rose. Do you have any contributions before we go to members' questions?
Thank you, Chair. In regard to putting in an additional condition, I think this may be difficult to do. So as a agricultural site, it does benefit from permitted development rights under Part 6 of the GDPO, specifically Part B, because it's less than 5 hectares in size. And that does allow for additional hard standing to be installed. There is also the issue that this specific application is directly in regard to the polytunnel and the feed store. Therefore, if we put a condition on, it would likely be that we could only restrict it to those 2 structures that are being considered as part of this application. It wouldn't apply to the wider site in general. So
could I ask, I mean, more hard standing, as Councillor Wallace said, would impact on the drainage, wouldn't it? And one of our strictest conditions is on the drainage and the maintenance of that. So can we just attach something to that that talks about, you know, any extra hard standing should be reflected by extra drainage facilities or something that would mitigate it?
It's possible, but again, I think it would be difficult. The drainage plan submitted has indicated that the site can take up to 49 cubic metres of water. So while it's possible that any additional hard standing may increase the amount of water, there's nothing to say that that wouldn't automatically be addressed by what is already there. It may be that we can look at something if additional it would be quite difficult to word, I think. Is
well, we'll have a think about that whilst we do the rest of the okay, so we'll move to members to questions on the report. If I could kick things off, Rose. If the new access is subject to enforcement and a separate application to regularise it, and that's refused, how does that affect this application?
So that would, if it's found that that would require a new application, I believe it's still being looked at by the enforcement officers. They haven't taken a view on what works then required or any further action is required at this point. That would be completely separate and it wouldn't necessarily impact this application. So we would look at that with completely new eyes. If there was something that did impact something on the site, for example, the drainage, then we could include drainage requirements as part of that application. So it would be completely separate in terms of how we assess it.
I see there isn't a lighting condition, but there was lighting in the photographs. Can we add a lighting condition so that we're happy that what is used is reasonable for the countryside and doesn't, you know, I mean, it's not in the dark night skies area, it's not in South Downs, is it? But it's close and it will, you know, unrestricted use of lighting, and those look like huge, great presumably security lights. If we could just look at those and condition that in the usual way.
Yes, we could look at lighting and including a lighting condition for details to be submitted.
And the other thing that I saw in the photographs was a satellite dish, which rather confused me. So do we have any restrictions on and do you happen to know why there's a satellite dish there?
My understanding is that that has now been removed. These pictures, unfortunately, were taken before all of the compliance with the enforcement works had taken place. So my understanding is that has now been removed.
Good. Okay. It's a bit confusing. Members, questions on the report? Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Cunningham, could you switch on your microphone, please?
I do beg your pardon, Chair.
And speak into it.
While the polytunnels are already installed and in operation without planning permission, why is the feed and buildings unfinished, and why are there still no information regarding finishing and materials?
Thank you, Chair. So condition 2 has asked for details of finishing materials to be submitted for the feed store. The polytunnel has been assessed by the inspectorate in terms of its external appearance and has been found to be acceptable in terms of design, how it looks in the countryside. So that was not part of this application to be considered because it was previously agreed as part of the appeal decision that that was acceptable.
It's not the polytunnels I'm concerned about, it's actually the feed store.
Yeah, so condition 2, that requires the details of the finishing materials to be submitted. Well, from the photos you saw, it hadn't been completed yet. So what I suggested at the beginning of the meeting was that we amend the trigger for the submission of those details to be within 3 months.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to pick up again on the hard standing. Although they do have permission, they do are able to put down hard standing. Could we link it into the drainage condition to ensure that it's permeable? Because you obviously can put down hard standing that is permeable rather than the full sort of concrete, just to alleviate any further impacts on the drainage. But I think that's being looked into at the moment.
Any more questions whilst we still ruminate over hard standing and what we can condition? Any more questions, members, on the report? Okay, over to you, Lorna.
Chair, we've been debating if we can amend condition 3 because primarily it is a drainage maintenance condition, and so I think the only option possibly would be a new condition which requires the applicant to illustrate to us any hard standing and the makeup of that hard standing associated with the polytunnel in itself, and to define that area, because we can't restrict hard standing the red lines for the whole site. We couldn't specify where it can or can't be because it's too ambiguous. So that's what I'm thinking. Have you got anything you wanted to add to that, Dan, in terms of the practicalities of asking them to define hard standing associated with it, and there should be no further hard standing associated with the polytunnel? It's just the ambiguity of where that begins and ends, sort of stretching, as to whether that's appropriate or not. But I think it's a very reasonable thing to do, given the fact there has been a notice. This is there to resolve it. We have had the appeal decision in the middle. There is known issues with the water there. It's a big community concern, so I do think it's reasonable. We're just trying to work out how to do that. If you've got something else.
Yeah, I know. So it's condition 3, as Lawrence already mentioned, refers to maintenance. The problem you've got is there are PD rights, so it's always going to be chicken and egg. We can control the condition and the site in terms of the hard standing that the council has alluded to that has gone down since. However, that condition will be tied at that particular point in time to the hard standings when the condition were put on. However, there is a PD right to put more hard standing down if it serves the polytunnel. So it's always going to be chicken and egg here in that regards. So with the best will in the world, we can put the condition down today based upon the hard standings that the council has alluded to. However, a further piece of hard standing serving that polytunnel could go in. So the strategy would only be fixed at that particular point in time. So
But I think
there is a PD right here.
I think we could remove it for the purpose of the policy.
Yeah,
I think if we tie down exactly what hard standing is required to service this polytunnel and put that in the condition, and the as Lorna was suggesting, that I think that's as close as we can get to restricting it, isn't it? I think so.
Agreed, Chair. I think we can ask them to specify hard standing needed for the purposes of the polytunnel, and then say therein after that is laid no further hard standing for the purposes of the polytunnel. And it is very practical to see on site, you know, what is the hard standing need where the pigs used to be kept to allow access to it, or there was a hard standing over to the mobile home at one point, so it's pretty clear that we could see that that was associated with it. That's all being removed now. So yes, I would recommend, and if the applicant is unhappy, they always have the process of appeal if they want to amend it, or they can come in later, or it's not practical. So yes, we could do two things: ask them to specify the hard standing for the polytunnel, and then specify no further hard standing for the purposes of that and in a defined area. I think that's the best we can
Lovely.
do.
Well,
I think before you do that, members, I've got obviously duty to explain to you how you put conditions on. So you've got to consider what is the PD right here. The PD right is obviously whether or not it's reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture. Okay, we're dealing with an agricultural site here, so that PD right is there to take a light touch approach for the purposes of agriculture. That's why it exists. It's quite broad. So you've got to consider that the particular applicant may have further uses for that site that serves an agricultural purpose, not just the polytunnel. So how do you take out the use of the polytunnel and the hard standing for the polytunnel vis-a-vis the wider agricultural use here, where the hard standing might serve also not only the polytunnel but another agricultural use at another part of the site? So how do you unlink it? That's the first point. So before you make a decision, consider that this is an agricultural site, and that PD right is very, very wide to allow agricultural farmers to have a light touch approach to plan permissions. That being said, also the NPPF and the law is quite clear: before you put planning conditions on, they've got to be necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise, and reasonable in all other regards. So there's a 6-stage test here that you've got to go through. That site has a very wide PD right. However, you're looking to remove elements of the PD right and tie it to the polytunnel. It's just right that I put that before you make your decision on the use of a condition here.
Thank you. I think that was very clear, but I do think that we can put this condition on. I do think it is reasonable because we're looking at the polytunnel, and given the history of this site, I think it's reasonable to do that. So if members are happy to leave it to the service lead of the built environment and myself to draft that. I mean, it doesn't take away their PD rights for other agricultural uses of the land, sadly, but nevertheless, it does. It will tie down exactly what is required to service the polytunnel. In this case, which is what we're looking at, which is the planning application before us. So I think that that's entirely reasonable. Okay. So we've got a new condition on lighting, and we're rewording condition 3. It'll probably be a new condition 3, but it will include all this drainage maintenance and stuff as well. Are members agreed with those proposals for conditions? Yes, agreed. Thank you. Okay, so if there's no more questions on the report, we will go to debate. Any debate, members? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. This committee does not take kindly to retrospective applications. However, we are also aware, of course, that this in itself is not a reason for refusal. However, this is now the third time we received a retrospective application from this applicant within 5 years. Some might say it's become a habit and an insult to the legal process and this council. However, reluctantly, because it does comply with our planning policies, I will be supporting the application itself on this occasion.
Okay, so if there's no more debate, we go to the decision. So this application is recommended with those amended conditions for approval. Can I see all those in favour, please?
8 unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that application is approved with the amendments as discussed. We will now take a coffee break and return at 11 a.m. Thank you. Okay, so now we move to the next item on our agenda, is item number 8, which is at Wickham House, 11 Mill Hill, Alresford. And our presenting officer is Cameron Taylor. Over to you, Cameron.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to do a verbal update, sorry. Could say there've been updated plans within the presentation relating to the north elevation. This is because when the application was originally submitted, there was shown to be a gable, which was a mistake. It should be a half here. So the updated plans have been shown in that, along with updated condition 2 to both the household and listed relating to that elevation. So it should read proposed north elevation, drawing number 1245-P-107, revision P2, received 10th of January 2025. And also another update with regards to the presentation, there has been the existing and proposed roof plans have been added just after the first floor plan within the presentation itself.
Thank you.
So this presentation is regard to Wickham House, which has 2 applications with us, a household and listed. With regards to that, the household one goes more into depth with regards to the impact upon neighbouring amenity, as the listed building application just relates to the impact that the proposed development would have upon the listed building itself. And this comes down to the conditions within the reports themselves. They will be different because within the listed building application, the conditions are those related specifically which require potentially further information, pre-commencement conditions, as suggested by a heritage officer during the planning process. So this presentation is in regards to a part single and 2-story extension, fenestration changes, minor internal works, along with repair works to a Grade 2 listed building, Wickham House in Alresford. Here we have the location plan, the site marked by the red outline. Within this, I'll just highlight the private access, which runs along the northern boundary of the property itself between Wickham House and number 13 Mill Hill. This leads to the parking to Wickham House at the rear, where the mouse cursor currently is, but also leads to the parking to the rear for the number 13, 15, 17 and 19 Mill Hill, where the mouse is here currently. Here is the existing and proposed site plan. The existing building is shown by the darker grey fill colour, with the proposed development being shown by the lighter grey. Where the mouse currently is, this rectangle here, that's the proposed 2-story extension, and to the west, projecting off, the smaller light grey one is one of the single-story extensions, and to the south here is also another single-story flat roof extension, which has a depth of 3 meters and extends 7.9 meters along that section. Next, we have the ground floor phasing plan, which just goes through the development history of the site itself, with the top left-hand plan being from 1620s, showing sort of how the house was back in those days. And then to the 1617, 1690s, the yellow additions are modifications made, including stair tower and extensions and sort of rebuildings after sort of the Alresford fire. And then the following one, 1787, is additional modernisation in response to fire protection measures, and this is shown sort of with the blue outlines on that plan. The bottom left one is from 1840s, which the changes are shown by orange, which show fenestration changes to the principal elevation, and the addition of an angular bay window there. And then 1920s, 1930s shows the adaptation of the west reception room, which is where the mouse currently is, which changes the and includes the addition of windows and doors to the south, which is shown by the green, which is quite difficult to see, but they are there just within the yellow section. And finally, the 1960s, 1970s, these additions are shown by the dark blue, which is an additional 2-story extension off the rear of the dwelling itself, which is where the extensions themselves come off of. Here we have the aerial photograph of the site marked by the yellow triangle. I will also again just highlight the private access coming off Mill Hill, which where the mouse currently is, that is the parking and hard standing to Wickham House itself. And just to the right of that is the parking and hard standing to number 13, 15, 17 and 19 Mill Hill. Next we have the existing and proposed east, which is the front elevation. And to this elevation, it includes the removal of the acrylic paint, and it's shown to be redecorated using a lime wash. So these details to be confirmed through pre-commencement condition under the listed application. There's also the radius and corner of the existing boundary wall, to the front. This is easy to be seen in the ground floor plan, which I'll highlight again when the ground floor plans come up. Next, we have a photo of the front elevation. The dwelling in the left-hand side of the left-hand photo is that of number 9 Mill Hill. And within the right-hand photo, we can just see the private access, which then runs up again towards the parking. I'm sorry, within the right-hand photo as well, I'd highlight this is the section of wall which is to be modified to create a curved corner. Then we have another additional 2 photos, which are now looking down Mill Hill, closer towards Broad Street. The dwelling itself is the painted white dwelling. And again, on the right-hand photo, the dwelling again is the right with just the access being visible. Next is the proposed existing proposed west elevation, which is the rear. As I say, the left-hand photo is the existing, the right-hand is the proposed. So the proposed 2-story extension is shown to match the existing brickwork as the existing 2-story 1960s element and roof tiles, whilst the single-story extensions project off the proposed 2-story extension, but also the existing 1960s, and are shown to have a cradle-style glazing. Next, we have the photos from the west, looking towards the west rear elevation. The left-hand one being further within to the garden, and the right-hand one being situated slightly where the stairs drop towards the patio, but we can see the rear elevation of the more historic side of the dwelling itself in the right-hand photo. Followed by further photos, which are situated in which they are situated a bit further out. The left-hand one is situated deeper into the garden, and the right-hand photo is situated within the parking area to number 13 Mill Hill, looking down the private access, where I'll just highlight the extension is coming off this elevation here behind this boundary wall. Next is the existing and proposed north side elevation. This is the plan which has been updated within the packet. It's shown to have a gable. However, the plans, it should actually have a half hip. So we can see the extension of the proposed extension projecting off the existing where the mast currently sits. But on this north elevation, there are also additional changes which are shown by the red dashed line, which is the infilling of 2 existing windows, with 2 additional windows being proposed, which are situated a bit just to the right of where existing ones sit currently, along with the replacement of 20th century windows along the ground floor with modern timber. And then there is also the proposed modern sand and cement render, which is to be removed and replaced with a lime render. Here we have a photo looking towards the north elevation, which are looking from within Mill Hill itself. In the right-hand photo, I'll just highlight these 2 windows where the mouse cursor is. They're the 2 20th century ones being replaced, followed by additional photos from the private access which now look towards Mill Hill itself. And in the left-hand photo, I'll highlight these 2 windows here on the first floor level are those to be infilled, with 2 additional windows then being replaced slightly to the right of where those ones are located. And so within the right-hand photo, again, I just highlight the extension is coming off this elevation here, situated behind the boundary wall, and I'll just highlight then with the left-hand dwelling there being number 13 Mill Hill. Next, we have the proposed south elevation, where on the proposed plans, the blue line there shows the projection of the 2-story extension. And within this, there is an additional dormer window being added. I'll note there is already an existing dormer window which is not being moved. However, new material is being refinished, and the proposed dormer will match that. Upon the plans themselves as well, there is also a dashed line, which is indicating of the boundary wall, which separates number 11, which is Wickham House, to number 9, which is the dwelling to the south. Within this application as well, there's also some alterations to the historic fabric, which I'll just highlight here, with an existing opening, which is being modified, which creates a means of escape from the stairs, which provide access to the basement, where this mouse cursor currently is, and then also replacement of windows and doors, which is of more modern fabric. And here we have the photos looking towards the south elevation here. So the right-hand one, I will highlight the existing dormer window in the first floor level. Again, the more historic section of the building is where the mouse currently is situated there. That is the more historic fabric of the proposed dwelling, or sorry, of the existing dwellings. And we have additional photos looking at the south elevation itself. The left-hand one is now looking down the garden. We can highlight the boundary wall which separates Wickham House from number 9. Again, the dormer window on the right-hand side of that photo. And the right-hand photo is taken from within that dormer, looking down towards number 9 itself. Here are the existing and proposed basement plans, with the proposed work being undertaken here, just relating to the staircase themselves, which lowering a plinth and extending of a modern brickwork to facilitate the insertion of the escape door for the basement itself. Then we have the existing and proposed ground floor plans, where I'll highlight the brick wall to the front, which is now being radiused, providing better visibility out of the private access itself. So, as I say, again, the acrylic paint to the front is being proposed to be removed and replaced with a lime wash. And within this bottom room, that is an existing opening, which is to be proposed with a new door. There's also further changes, which includes the radiusing of a section of the hallway here. And say no additional external steps is to provide access from that escape door from the basement. With existing openings sort of semi-historic section being slightly increased in size. And on the top side of the plan there are the 2 windows, which would be the 20th century windows to be replaced, whilst the works within this section, as the mouse cursor currently is, relate to the 1960s extension itself. Here we have the existing and proposed first floor plans, where to the listed building, there is a new partition wall proposed in a bedroom, along with the removal of some modern panelling. As this is within the historic fabric. And then we have the 2 proposed windows at the first floor level are situated here and here, which are serving an ensuite bathroom and a wardrobe, with the existing windows which are being infilled situated just there and here. The proposal also includes the reopening of doorways which have been opened previously in the past, with the extension itself being to provide a larger master bedroom. Here is the additional plans, which are the roof plans, which include proposal to the historic fabric, which is the removing of existing bitumen felt roof and lifting and refitting of a more suitable roofing material, which to be confirmed during a condition under the list application. And within the 2-story element itself, I'll just highlight the existing dormer, and this is the proposed dormer window here. Here we have the June sun study, with the top being the proposed, the sun study with the proposed development attached, and the bottom one being the existing. Followed by the December sun study, again, the top being proposed and the bottom being existing, with the most notable difference coming sort of at the 12 o'clock period, where we can see there is a slight increase in overshadowing as a result of the proposed extension. Here we have just additional photos from within the private access and hard standing area, looking east down the private access, where I'll highlight number 13, Mill Hill here, the proposed site of Wickham House, and then another one just slightly close as well to just get a better understanding of the relationship between the properties. That concludes my presentation, with the officer's recommendation being for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. We now move to public speaking, and our first speaker is David Cooper. Mr. Cooper, welcome. And you will have up to 3 minutes from when you start speaking. The microphone's turned on by pressing the button. There's no rush at all. Take your time. And when you're ready, you have up to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is David Cooper and my wife and I live at 13 Mill Hill, which is the cottage immediately adjacent to Wickham House, from which we're separated, as you've seen, by a fairly narrow private drive, and we've been living there for 10 years. First of all, I'd like to say we welcome the proposals to repair and refurbish Wickham House. It's a very important property in Alresford, and it's really heartening to see that the new owners are prepared to put so much time and money into bringing it back to life. Our sole concern, and the reason we're here today, is that we believe that the proposed two-storey extension will deprive us of natural light to an extent which any reasonable person would find unacceptable. Our cottage is quite narrow, and most of its rooms rely on light gathered from the side elevation opposite Wickham House. Unfortunately, there isn't a photograph in the planning officer's presentation which shows just how small our windows are on this side. Without seeing them, we feel it's very difficult for you to appreciate just how much it would affect us to lose any further light at all from this direction, especially in winter. This is particularly the case with our dining room and our sitting room, but it would also affect our loft conversion, which is used as a bedroom and dressing room. Your planning officer's report suggests that we have nothing to worry about and that the extension will not cause us any loss of amenity. Nobody hopes that this assessment is correct more than we do, but to be perfectly honest, we're not convinced that it is, as we feel that he may have underestimated the impact the extension would have on our level of light. The sun tracking information you've seen is quite difficult to interpret, but it does show a loss of direct sunlight. And more importantly, we will lose natural ambient light in the winter months, just when it's most needed. This is clearly not an objective question of planning policy or law, where you as committee members have expert advice to follow. Rather, it's a judgment about what level of harm it's reasonable to expect us to accept and what level of certainty you need in reaching that decision. That's why we've come today to ask you to defer a decision on this application and to make a site visit. Once you've done that, you'll be as well informed as you can be about the potential impact of the proposal. If you then decide to grant approval, having seen the potential effect yourselves, then we'll accept that decision with good grace and hope that you're right. If, however, you decide that our concerns are justified, then it could be suggested to the applicants that their application be modified, maybe to apply for a single-storey extension instead of a two-storey one. This could be made without much delay and with our complete support. Thank you for your time this morning. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Good timing as well. Members, do we have questions of clarification for the neighbour? Councillor Ashwell.
I'm just trying to see from that map where exactly number 13 is. I can't see. Oh, that one. Okay. Right, thank you.
Can you just tell me exactly which windows you think are going to be impacted?
There's no picture, unfortunately, of the side elevation of our cottage, I don't think, that you can see clearly, but it will be the dining room which takes the brunt of it, and the loft bedroom, which is in the loft, as you might imagine. The sitting room to some extent will be affected, but not quite as much. They are relatively small windows. They couldn't be changed because we're in a conservation area, even if we could do it. And so this is where we're worried about the loss of light that we have in those rooms.
There's already quite a lot of shadowing from the existing building, isn't there?
There is, yes, there is already. That's going to, well, a lot of that will get far worse because I believe the new extension is something like 3 meters long. It's a full height extension, albeit with a hip roof. But it will cause a lot of extra overshadowing, in our opinion. And for that reason, we feel that the committee should do a site visit, if you're agreeable, so you can see for yourselves.
Thank you. I think many members will know the area anyway, Alresford. We have regularly been to Alresford and I regularly go and I know the site myself. So any more questions of clarification, members? No? Thank you very much indeed. You may return to your seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Paula. Yes, carry on, Langford.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify that it's on the report, page 104. Is it the picture on the left of the windows that we're discussing here?
The picture on the right shows a bit of our cottage, but you can't really see the size of the windows because of the angle of the photograph.
But I believe there's a better photograph on page 104 of the report.
Oh, is there? Okay, can you?
Yeah, that's definitely the cottage. The one that you can see the gable end of. Yes.
Is there a better photograph you can see?
Thank you. Could you see
the loft?
That's the back of Wickham House, isn't it? So. Oh, okay. The loft windows at the top there. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't show the dining room and sitting room windows. You can't really see the size of them, but those are the two windows on the ground floor, obviously.
Are they similar sizes to the ones on the first floor?
In the loft?
No, the first floor, because there are two windows.
Oh, they're
just
yes,
under the.
They're slightly large. No, they're larger.
They're a bit bigger than that.
That's a landing window. The one on the first floor.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Any more questions, members? No. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We next have the ward councillor, Councillor Margot Power. Councillor Power, good morning. Is it morning? Yes. You have up to 5 minutes, Councillor Power, as you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. Wickham House does dominate 13 Mill Hill, and my objection is primarily to do with the impact on those immediate neighbours. The aerial photograph on page 137 is the only photograph in your pack which I think shows the proximity of 13 Mill Hill to Wickham House. And 13 Mill Hill does have quite a lot of open sky visible to what is a very small house with very limited windows. And so it's not just about these direct sunlight, it is all about ambient light and sight of the sky, which we know is important. The second story extension will have a significant impact on the light available to the side and rear of 13 Mill Hill. Again, not direct sunlight, but light and sky, and I do feel that is unacceptable. I've referred you earlier to page 146 of your pack, which shows the two small windows on the side immediately facing Wickham House. That is the only light available to the dining room of 13 Mill Hill, and there will be a significant impact on that room. In addition, there's a proposed new window at first floor level, which will be directly opposite and above the window providing the dining room light. I note that the proposed window has been conditioned as obscure glass, which will help. However, this will be opened. And although in theory there's a bath shown just underneath the window, that bath is not guaranteed, of course, it's merely indicative. The dining room will also be impacted by this window. It will lose privacy. I asked that this application be refused on the grounds of unacceptable impact on the neighbouring property. I think it's unfortunate that neither the submitted plans nor the officer's report properly demonstrates the impact on 13 Mill Hill. In my original application, I did ask for a site visit, and if you don't feel able to refuse this application, I would like you please to defer your decision until you've had the opportunity to go and see the site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Power. Members, do we have any questions or clarification for the ward councillor? I think our questions will be for the officer. Thank you very much, Councillor Powell. Thank you. Very clear. And finally, we have Simon Goddard, the supporter. Good morning, Mr. Goddard. And you have up to 3 minutes from when you start speaking. There's no rush. And you can switch on the microphone by pressing the button on the base. Thank you very much.
Thank you, committee, for allowing us the opportunity to speak. I think the first thing to say about this house is it's a Grade 2 listed house, and it's actually been vacant for 3 years now. And what we're trying to do, our clients trying to do, is bring it back into use. We spent considerable time in actually designing the new extension with our clients, and this allows us to keep a lot of the historic fabric intact within the main building without the need to move partitions. So if we take, for example, Councillor Power's point regarding the 2 windows at first floor level, you'll notice on your plans that there are already 2 windows at first floor level, and they're simply being moved. So the current position actually overlooking is unchanged. The size of those windows are almost identical to the windows that already exist. And indeed, one of those windows actually was previously a bedroom and now will be a bathroom. And of course, there's a mutual point on overlooking bathrooms. I don't want people to be looking into those either. Now, if we take the point regarding the heights, the height of that building, the new extension, the first floor, the actual line of the ridge, which follows the existing ridge, is about the same length of this piece of table here. So it's extending it by 2.5 meters. When we design these buildings, we have to look very carefully at daylight, and that's why we do these studies. And we geolocate that building in Hampshire. And then we're able to orientate it with the correct orientation. We produce 3D plans, which are also based on measured surveys for the existing house and the adjoining house. Now, the point with it is that when we're looking at BRI RE Digest 209, which was revised in 2022. That talks about the impact of light. And so we've been very careful to make sure we're working to that. The question of numbers of windows, there is a single window to the neighbour's dining room, but the sitting room has 2 windows. One faces the alleyway and one faces the front garden. Similarly, the bedroom on the side elevation has 2 windows. One faces the rear garden, getting west light, as well as facing our proposal. The attic room only has a single room. That was one of the ones you saw in Cameron's photographs. So in actual fact, the impact is very marginal. So what we want to do is we want to commend this for approval, seeing as we've spent a lot of time and been very careful about how this would do it. There have been no objections from the neighbours to the south, and the Town Council also support the proposal.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the applicant's representative? No, you were very clear. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you. If you could just switch the microphone off as you go, please. If you could just switch off the microphone. Sorry, just press the, perfect, thank you. Right, 1, 2, 3, yes. So now we return to our officer. Cameron, do you have anything to add before we come to officers?
I've got nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
So members, we'll take questions on the whole of this report. Do we have questions for our officer? Can I just ask about the bathroom window that potentially overlooks the dining room window of number 13? Now, obviously, it's already obscured, isn't it? Do we know about how it opens?
I don't know how it is potentially open, but there could potentially be a condition which restricts it to not be.
We restrict it to top opening or limited opening in some way?
We do require details regarding the windows within the listed building application itself. So we could potentially seek them to add that in that to address how it would be opening if it's only to a certain degree, bottom opening to a certain degree, so that it won't be able to be open fully to provide views out. Because I think the issue with changing sort of how the window looks, given it's a listed building. We would need to sort of run that past our heritage officers prior to that, which, like I say, we do require the details as part of the listed building application for the new windows.
Okay, well, perhaps we can bear that in mind when we get to the next application then. Questions, members? Councillor Pett.
Thank you, Chair. I did take a look yesterday afternoon at this property, and I went up the drive and looked at the two small windows in the cottage. What I'm having, so I've got a good visual image in my head of this, but looking at these sun studies, could I just ask Cameron if you could just talk us through some of these, because perhaps it's just me, but I find them quite hard to interpret in terms of the effect or the potential effect that the speaker, the objector, was concerned about, and perhaps mainly the December page.
So with regards to the sun studies, as they given it's December, shorter days, when it's shown to be sort of the 8 a.m. 8:06, there doesn't appear to be any change regarding the proposed, say the top to the bottom. With regards to the 12:06 p.m, so say you've got the central gable window sort of centrally located on number 13 where the mouse currently is. They've also, say you do also have the existing ground floor windows, which are sort of about centrally located. So that will probably be when there might be some degree of impact. As we can see with the extension projecting out, there is the extension of the shadowing across that. And as I say, with the bottom, we can see there is some sunlight reaching that elevation. To what degree that would be reaching the ground floor windows, I personally can't tell with that plan, but we can see that there will be some degree of additional shadowing. And then at 351, does also appear to be some slight increase towards the front of number 13, as I will just highlight there with the mouse there, which we see some sunlight on that compared to the proposal, which does increase shadowing slightly in that time as well.
Any more questions, members? Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. The two windows that are going to be moved at the top there, how close are they going to get to that drain pipe? Or is that drain pipe going to be removed as well? It's on page.
So it looks to be that drain pipe will be removed, say during the relocation of the windows, just so members can see this drain pipe here, which is no longer shown on the proposed plans.
Okay, so it won't be replaced.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, so if there are no more questions on the report, Councillor Ashwell, can you just switch off it? Thank you. We move to debate. Perhaps I should just contribute at this point. First of all, I do understand the concerns of the next door neighbours, and I do appreciate that when you're already in a position where your light is limited because of the overshadowing, you will feel very anxious about any possible increase in that. However, you know, by nature of the area that you live in Alresford, these houses are close together. They're ancient houses. They've been there a long time. And the nature of that road is that they're quite close together, and there is going to be overshadowing of neighbours. I don't think that the impact of the extension will have any real significance on your property. I've looked carefully at the plans, and I've looked carefully. I know the area and I know the road, and I've looked at the potential impact. And so I don't think that the increase in the overshadowing will be significant. I mean, there obviously is existing shadowing. We will look at the opening of that bathroom window in the conditions that go with the listed building application to ensure that it can't be left wide open and enable overlooking to happen, although I think that that would be unlikely in any event. So that we will deal with that concern. I meant to ask actually, Cameron, if I can just come back to you very quickly on the curved wall that's going to be the wall in front of the building that's going to become curved. Is that going to then be flint and brick like the one opposite? Because I think one of the photographs showed a similar.
So there is one opposite, which is brick and flint. However, it's proposed to retain the existing appearance as that brick wall as is. So
is it just brick? Yeah. There's a bit of flint in there, isn't there? I can see some flint.
I'm not sure that's flint or if that's sort of just weathering of the brick or whatnot, but it's shown to be matching the materials of that existing wall there, just curved round.
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure there's flint there. I mean, I remember thinking there's flint there, so perhaps we can ask for it to be brick and flint. Anyway, whatever. The one opposite is flint. Okay. So I do think that I would like to commend the applicants for the time and the trouble that they're taking to get this right and to do the right thing with this house that I hadn't realised it hadn't been lived in for 3 years. That's quite concerning for such a historic dwelling. And it must be a relief to neighbours as much as the whole town that somebody has taken on that huge responsibility and that huge commitment. And I'm sure that when the work is finished, you know, that Wickham House will be brought back into use and be available to be lived in for another 300 years, let's hope. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. I think it'll be a huge boost to the whole of that end of Alresford, actually. And we are including a condition for a construction management plan, which hopefully will help to alleviate concerns of neighbours in terms of access for the construction vehicles and so on, and that will all be carefully looked at in that plan. Any more contributions to debate, members? No. So if we're ready to make the decision, this application is recommended for approval. Can I see those in favour, please?
8 unanimous, Chair.
So that application is approved. And we move straight on to item number 9, which is also at Wickham House. And this is the listed building application. So Cameron, if you could just explain to us why we're having to do it twice, that would be helpful. We'll move over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So again, yes, this one now relates to the listed building consent for the property of Wickham House itself. This one is just because the development will take place within the listed building, which is grade 2, and will involve works which need to be assessed to what harm they might have upon said listed building, and as such, consultation has been undertaken with a heritage officer with it. And as it's related to just the listed building, it will have different conditions compared to the householder, as it doesn't require us to assess sort of neighbouring amenity impacts or such. It's solely reflecting the impacts upon the listed building itself.
Right, thank you. So now we move to public speaking. And I think they've given up. So no, Mr. Cooper, no Councillor Power. Mr. Goddard, did you want to say anything about the listed building application? No, you're fine. Okay, thank you. So members, do we have any questions on the listed building application for our officer? Yes, Councillor Ladford-Smith.
I just wanted clarification on why we have the application twice, but you've provided that, so thank you very much for that. It's a very comprehensive report.
So we just have the question of the extra consideration of how that bathroom window that potentially overlooks the neighbour opens, and you've taken that on board, have you already, Cameron?
I've made a note in my book here, sort of noting that we will, as that sort of seems to be an issue, I'll highlight that with the agents themselves and sort of see. I'm not sure if we can. They say if we relate, they say condition 6 in the list one, which is it requires large scale details of all new and altered windows, roof lights, dormers and doors. So they say as this will be an additional window, they'll be needing to provide that information up front. At the pre-commencement stage, so in which they can address sort of the opening, which we can then sort of confirm to what degree it opens and if we'll be happy with that to, I say, to ensure there won't be any overlooking potentially for number 13.
So can we just delegate the actual wording of any additional phrases that we need to add to that?
I just want to double check, can do any additional wording to condition 6 or if that covers it?
This is the list of building applications, isn't it? So those matters of overlooking are really part and parcel of the householder application. However, we were going to deal with those matters in the detailed design of the list of building application. Let me look at the wording quickly again.
Okay, whilst we just look at the technical issue there, I'm sure that we can deal with that in cooperation with the applicants.
Okay, Chair, we agreed on condition 6. It could read no related works, etc. On site until large scale details of the new and altered windows, roof lights, dormers and doors, including illustrating obscuration and non-opening. Yeah, from the top can be submitted to and approved in writing.
Good, I think that covers it. Thank you very much. Okay, so any more questions on the report? Otherwise we go to debate. Any debate? So this application for a listed building is recommended for approval. So can I see all those in favour of this application, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
So that also is approved. So now we will finish for lunch and return at 2 p.m. Thank you.